There is something people rarely tell you about caring for someone you love. It usually does not destroy you in one dramatic moment. It wears you down gradually, more like water working against stone, quietly, patiently. So slowly that you barely notice what is disappearing until one morning you look at yourself and cannot remember the last time you slept beyond 5 a.m., the last meal you finished while sitting at a table, or the last person who asked how you were doing and stayed long enough to hear the real answer. That was me, Martin Hale, 77 years old, retired government contractor, 31 years in federal service, a clean record, a dependable pension, and a 4-bedroom brick colonial on Elmwood Court in Myers Park, Charlotte, North Carolina. I finished paying that house off in 2009, and every morning I backed out of that driveway, I felt proud of it. Myers Park is one of those places with old trees and broad streets where neighbors still lift a hand when they pass, and usually mean it. We moved there in 1991, when our children were still young. Elaine chose the house. She walked through the front door, stood where the afternoon light crossed the back windows, and said, "Martin, this is the one. This is where we raise them." 38 years of marriage taught me she was right about most things. Somewhere around year 12, I stopped pretending. That surprised me. And for the last 26 months, I had been taking care of her full time. My wife, Elaine, had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia at 64. From that day forward, my life narrowed into medications, appointments, good mornings, bad afternoons, and whatever version of the day her mind allowed us to have. That was my world. What I did not know was that during those same 26 months, the man I thanked God for every day, the man I proudly called my son, was taking me apart financially. And I am going to tell you exactly how he did it. We will get there. First, do us one small favor. Subscribe. A lot of people listen without ever doing it, and it costs nothing, but it means a great deal to us. Tap the like button too, and once you have heard the whole story, leave your thoughts in the comments. You are going to like it here. The neurologist who diagnosed Elaine was Dr. Mercer. He was soft-spoken, with kind eyes behind wire-framed glasses. He had clearly given life-changing news, enough times to know that the words had to arrive slowly, almost one at a time, so a person could keep up with what was happening. He told us on a Thursday afternoon. I drove home from the Atrium Health Neurology Clinic on Moorhead Street without saying much of anything. Elaine fell asleep in the passenger seat somewhere along Providence Road. She did that after long appointments sometimes. Her head rested toward the window, and one hand lay open across her lap, as though she expected someone to place something there. At every red light, I looked over at her. I kept telling myself, "Drive, just get her home, get her inside, then you can fall apart." When I finally pulled into the driveway on Elmwood Court, I stayed in the car for 20 minutes. I thought about my retirement account, $340,000. Every bit of it was meant for Elaine. Not travel, not a boat, not the things people assume a retired man is saving for. I had already researched a memory care facility on Carmel Road in South Charlotte, quietly, without telling anyone, because I had been carrying one fear for years and had never spoken it out loud. I was afraid I would die before she did, and if that happened, I needed to know she would still have care, still have somewhere safe to go, still have people who would know what to do when I was no longer there. At 77, that kind of fear does not stay theoretical. It was the final thought in my head nearly every night before I closed my eyes. 3 days after Dr. Mercer gave us the diagnosis, my phone rang. My son, Nathan Hale. "Dad?" His voice was calm and warm. the voice of someone who had already made his decision before placing the call. "I'm coming home. You are not doing this alone, and I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you, I'm coming home." I should explain something about myself. I am not a man who cries easily. I spent 31 years in federal service, and my own father believed tears were a weakness of character. That was how I was raised. I made it through funerals, layoffs, and one terrible January in 2003 that I still do not discuss, and I kept myself together. But I cried on that call. For nearly a minute, I could not form a proper sentence. I just held the phone against my ear and breathed, like a man who had been underwater longer than he realized. I remember thinking, this is the son Elaine always believed he was. She had defended Nathan for years. She saw something in him that I sometimes had trouble seeing. And now, when it mattered, he was proving her right. I was so relieved that I barely slept that night, although for once it was not because I was frightened. Now pay close attention to what comes next. Every useful thing Nathan did, every warm gesture, every appointment he attended, every time he took something off my shoulders, I want you to remember it beside one fact I did not discover until much later. The first withdrawal from my retirement account was made 4 days after Elaine's diagnosis. 4 days. He was not coming home only because his parents needed help. He had seen a crisis and recognized what he believed he could take from it. I did not know any of that then. What I saw was a son who looked devoted enough to fool a 77-year-old man who had spent most of his adult life believing he was reasonably good at reading people. Nathan rented an apartment in North Davidson, close enough to Elmwood Court that he could show up often, but far enough away that it still looked like he had his own independent life. He came over 4, sometimes 5 days each week. He attended Elaine's Atrium Health appointments. He shook hands with her care team. He remembered names. He asked thoughtful questions. Dr. Mercer once told me it was rare to see a son that involved. I stood there nodding, prouder than I can explain. Nathan handled bills, insurance calls, grocery runs to the Harris Teeter on Park Road, and pharmacy pickups at the CVS on Queens Road. He took over all the things that had been quietly pushing me underwater, and he did them so smoothly that I thanked God for him every day. What I did not understand was that while he was helping, he was also studying every number that passed through his hands. By month 3, Elaine had 3 difficult days in a row. She was frightened, confused, reaching toward people who were not there, unable to tell what season it was. I had not slept properly in 10 days. For the first time in 40 years, I forgot to pay the electricity bill. Nathan came over on a Wednesday evening and sat across from me at the kitchen table on Elmwood Court. He brought a folder. He placed it between us with the care of a man who had spent time preparing for that conversation. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to listen all the way through." That was how he spoke when he wanted to sound reasonable, measured, patient, every sentence polished enough to feel reassuring without sounding prepared. "You're 77. Mom is 64. If something happens to you tomorrow, and I'm not saying this to scare you, I'm saying it because I'm trying to protect both of you, what happens to her? Everything is under your name. Your pension is under your name. If you die first, things can freeze while lawyers sort through it, and Mom could be sitting in this house unable to reach what she needs during the worst week of her life." Every word landed exactly where I was weakest. He had found the fear I carried at 3 in the morning and turned it into a proposal. "These are power of attorney documents," he said, opening the folder. He did not rush me. It means I can manage the financial part, bills, accounts, pension paperwork. You focus on Mom. Let me carry this side of it. I looked down at the papers. My eyes were tired. My hands were tired. My whole body was running on care, fear, and the kind of exhaustion that reaches past muscles and gets into judgment. The kind that makes you stop reading as carefully as you once did. I signed. The next morning, Nathan told me he had everything notarized at a UPS store on Central Avenue. He mentioned it casually. And that night, God help me, I slept better than I had in months. I thought I had handed one heavy responsibility to someone strong enough to take it. What I had actually handed him was access to everything I had spent a lifetime saving. Then came 26 months of 5 a.m. medications, Atrium Health visits, good days, bad days, and mornings when Elaine could laugh about something from 1988 as though it had happened yesterday, then stand in our kitchen 20 minutes later and not know where she was. 26 months of holding myself together because she needed me steady. 26 months of lying awake after she finally slept, doing calculations in my head about the future. How long would the money last? Would it be enough? Would I be enough? Then came a Sunday dinner at my daughter Rebecca's house in Ballantyne. Rebecca is my younger child. She has her mother's eyes and my stubbornness. Her husband, Owen Price, is a quiet man who works in bank compliance for a regional bank uptown. He is the type of person people barely notice at a party and are extremely grateful to know when something goes wrong. There was jollof rice, fried chicken, and grandchildren making noise in the hallway the way grandchildren are supposed to on a Sunday. Elaine wore the blue dress I have always loved on her. She was having a decent day, present, warm, laughing for real at something Nathan said from across the table. Nathan was in full form, generous, loud, reaching for people's glasses before they had to ask. Telling a fishing story about Lake Norman with the relaxed confidence of someone who seemed to be carrying absolutely nothing on his conscience. Then Owen's hand touched mine beneath the table. He slipped his phone into my palm without looking at me. 8 words were on the screen. Dad, check your retirement account right now. Below that were 4 more. Then fake chest pains. And one last word. Now. I looked at Owen. His jaw was tight. His eyes did not move. He gave me one slow nod. Trust me. Do not ask questions here. Just trust me. I opened the banking app under the table. I had not checked the account in months. Nathan managed the money. That was the arrangement I had agreed to. The balance on the screen was $12,847. I stared at it. There had been $340,000 in that account. 31 years of federal service. Every dollar saved for one reason. Elaine. $12,847. Across from me, Nathan was still laughing at his own story. Elaine was smiling with him, bless her heart, even though she had lost track of what he was talking about several sentences earlier. The children were still running through the house. Dinner still smelled like dinner. I placed one hand against my chest. I don't feel right, I said softly. I think I need some air. Rebecca stood up before I finished saying it. Her concern looked completely natural. Even Nathan seemed worried for a second. She is her mother's daughter. Rebecca can wear calm on her face, even when everything underneath it is shaking. Owen helped me outside and into the car. Nathan, my son, the man whose phone call had made me cry with relief 26 months earlier, stood in the doorway of Rebecca's house and waved. Feel better, Dad. I'll check on you tomorrow. I sat in that car, and my first thought was not about myself. It was not even about the money. It was about Elaine. That $340,000 had been her protection. The memory care facility on Carmel Road that I had saved on my phone. The place I had visited twice without telling anyone. The hallways I had walked slowly. The staff I had questioned. The place I kept asking myself whether it was good enough for her. The safety I had spent years building around the woman I was terrified of leaving behind. Gone. And the man who had taken it was standing in a warm doorway in Ballantyne, waving goodbye as though nothing had happened. The truth rarely reaches you in one clean piece. It arrives in fragments, and each fragment seems to damage a different part of you. Picture a 77-year-old man sitting in the passenger seat of a silver Honda Accord on a quiet Sunday evening in Ballantyne, North Carolina. The engine is running. Streetlights are starting to come on. His grandchildren can still be heard faintly through the walls of the house behind him. He is staring at $12,847 on a phone screen, and he is completely still. Not because he is calm. I was nowhere near calm. I was still because my mind had been handed something so enormous that it seemed unwilling to move until it had figured out what it was looking at. $12,847. 31 years of federal service. Years of packed lunches. Used cars instead of new ones. Telling my children no to things I probably could have afforded because every dollar I did not spend was another dollar placed in that account. For Elaine. Always for Elaine. Owen drove away from the house without explaining anything. He took us uptown, not to a hospital, not to the police, to his office building on South Tryon Street, 7th floor. The place was empty on a Sunday night, and our steps echoed through the lobby. He was about to show me something I knew, even before I saw it. I would never be able to forget. If you have been listening for a while, and you want us to keep bringing you stories like this, hitting the like button and subscribing genuinely helps. Thank you. Owen shut the office door. He sat across from me and looked at me in a way I recognized from doctors giving serious news. Martin. He had never called me Martin before. To him, I was always Dad. I need you to know that what I'm about to show you has been checked 3 times. I didn't come to you because I had a feeling. I came because I have a case. How long have you known? I asked. 4 months. 4 months. I let the answer sit there. I did not get angry at him, not yet. His face told me those 4 months had not been easy for him either. Why wait? He folded his hands together on the desk. Because Rebecca needed to be absolutely certain before we destroyed her brother in front of her father. And because I needed every door closed before you knew one was open. I nodded slowly. I understood. Then he opened the folder. He began with the withdrawals. 16 months of them. Usually between $3,000 and $5,000. None above $9,000. The timing changed. The amounts changed. The weeks changed. Careful enough to spend freely, but never in a way that looked repetitive. Owen slid the first page toward me. This technique has a name, Owen said. It's called structuring, and it is a federal crime separate from the fraud itself. I looked at the receipts laid out in sequence across his desk. 16 months. Orderly, documented, difficult to misunderstand. My son had been taking from me with patience, with planning, with the same discipline I had spent years trying to teach him. He had learned it. Just not for anything I would ever have wanted. Then Owen showed me the pension. Nathan had used my power of attorney, the same documents I had signed at our kitchen table while exhausted, to contact the pension administrator. He presented the paperwork. It looked legitimate because it was legitimate paperwork. He requested that my monthly pension distributions be sent to a second account he controlled. The administrator processed the request. Why would they not? The documentation appeared proper. Nathan had made sure it did. I did not say anything at first. I looked past Owen toward the wall behind him and tried to do the math. Something moved through me then that was difficult to name. It was not exactly anger. It was not exactly grief. It was colder than either. Then came the statements. Nathan had changed the mailing address on my retirement account to a private P.O. box he opened on Central Avenue. The paper statements stopped coming to Elmwood Court because Nathan handled the finances and because I trusted the arrangement. I never noticed. For more than a year, I had been living without seeing what was happening. And my own son had been the person who made sure I stayed that way. Then Owen showed me Elaine's account. He pushed one sheet across the desk, and before I read it, I knew from his face that this one was worse. Elaine had kept a small private savings account for decades. Her own money. Her own little measure of independence in a marriage where I managed most of our larger finances. She rarely spoke about it. It was simply hers. Something she had built quietly over 40 years. Gone. Completely liquidated using her power of attorney. On bad days, Elaine did not remember that account existed. On better days, it never occurred to her to check it. Nathan had understood exactly when to move. I put both hands flat on Owen's desk and looked down at them. Old hands. Hands that had worked for 31 years. Hands that had signed papers on a tired Wednesday night. Hands that, apparently, had not protected enough. "There's another one," Owen said. I looked up. He saved the last document for the end. It was a beneficiary change form. My signature was on it. I remembered the morning. Month 9. A rushed Tuesday. Elaine had been awake most of the night, and I was trying to get her dressed and ready for another Atrium Health appointment. Nathan arrived with coffee and a stack of paperwork. "Dad, just sign these. Routine account maintenance. I've already taken care of everything." I signed without reading. Buried in that stack was a form removing Rebecca and the grandchildren as beneficiaries from my retirement account. Nathan replaced them with himself. My own signature. My own hand. I had removed my daughter and grandchildren from what I had spent my life building, and I had not even known I had done it. Owen still was not finished. "There's something else you need to hear." This was the part that changed how quickly I acted. For several months, Nathan had been making small comments to extended family. At cookouts, after church, during phone calls. Things like, "Dad's having a harder time than he admits. I'm worried about how he's managing. I've had to step in more than people realize." An elder law attorney Owen had spoken with privately recognized the pattern. Nathan was creating a record around me. A social one first. The kind that could support a conservatorship petition later. If he could convince a court that I was no longer capable of handling my own finances, he could seek legal control over what remained. The theft was one part of it. He had also been building a cage around me, one careful remark at a time. I sat there on the 7th floor of a building on South Tryon Street and looked at Owen Price, my daughter's husband, the quiet man I had shared Sunday dinners with for 11 years, and something inside me changed permanently. "How did you find this?" I asked. Routine compliance review, he said. The withdrawal pattern triggered a review. I saw your name. And then? I closed my office door, he said. And I didn't tell anyone until I was sure. My phone rang. Rebecca. Owen answered and put her on speaker. Her voice was carefully controlled, the voice of someone who had been forcing herself to stay steady for hours and had almost reached the edge of what that control could hold. Elaine was fine, she said. The grandchildren were settled. Nathan was still there. He was asking about my health, lingering near everyone, showing concern for the room. Then Rebecca stopped for a second. "Dad," she said quietly, "Mom just told Nathan he's a good boy." She patted his hand. She said he always was. None of us spoke. The three of us sat with that sentence. I told her Nathan had just stepped out to get some air. Rebecca went on. I kept my voice normal. Then all I could hear for a moment was her breathing through her nose, slow and hard, the way she does when she refuses to cry because somebody else needs her functional. I thought about what it was costing her. Rebecca had defended Nathan for most of her life. To me, to Elaine, to relatives who talked quietly at Thanksgiving, even to herself on nights when she had doubts she did not want to admit. She explained him, covered for him, loved him past the point where other people might have stopped. Because to Rebecca, that was what family meant, and Nathan had used that loyalty as shelter while taking from their father the money meant to protect their mother. Then Owen asked me something, quietly. What do you want to do, Martin? At 77 years old, sitting in an empty office on a Sunday night with $12,847 left and the weight of everything I had just learned pressing against me, I understood I had two basic choices. I could get loud. I could call Nathan immediately and empty every angry sentence in my chest into his ear. Or I could do something quieter, something that might actually protect Elaine. I thought about the memory care facility on Carmel Road. I thought about what the next years of her life might require, and I thought about what would happen if I let rage make my next decision. I looked at Owen. I want every door closed before he knows one is open, I said. Not for me, for her. She gets protected first. Everything else comes after. Owen gave one nod. He already had a plan. Revenge makes noise. Justice can work quietly. I chose the one that gave Elaine a chance. People have strange ideas about what justice is supposed to feel like. Movies teach you to expect a moment of satisfaction, a confrontation, a speech, the person who hurt you finally understanding exactly what they did, while you stand there feeling some clean sense of victory. That is not how it felt to me. When the person on the other side is your own child, doing what must be done does not feel like winning. It feels more like losing something on purpose, because leaving it attached would do even more damage. I drove home to Elmwood Court that Sunday night and sat in the driveway again. It was the second time in 26 months I had sat there, unable to make myself open the front door. The first time, I had been trying to understand how to protect Elaine from a diagnosis. This time, I was trying to understand how to protect her from our son. The next morning, I was speaking with an elder law attorney named Diane Parker. Her office was on Providence Road, about 12 minutes from my house. Owen had already contacted her. She was waiting for me. I arrived at 9 a.m., carrying everything Owen had shown me the night before. Diane moved through the material carefully and without drama, one page after another. She asked direct questions, checked what authority had been granted, and separated what could be stopped immediately from what would take longer. By noon that day, the powers of attorney Nathan held for both Elaine and me had been formally revoked. Every one of them. Filed, processed, effective. Before Nathan sat down for lunch that Monday, he no longer had legal access under those documents. He did not know it. Diane then began the process of correcting the beneficiary designation on my retirement account, the one I had signed without understanding on that rushed Tuesday morning. Rebecca and the grandchildren were restored. Nathan was removed. He still did not know. On day 2, Owen's compliance department opened a formal internal investigation. The material he had spent 4 months organizing went to the bank's fraud team in a package so complete that Detective Aaron Mills of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Financial Crimes Unit later told Owen it was one of the most organized private case files he had received in 11 years. Owen, being Owen, simply nodded and said, "Thank you." On day 3, Nathan came to Elmwood Court. He brought food. He sat beside Elaine while she watched her program. He straightened the living room without being asked. He poured me a glass of sweet tea and asked how I was feeling after the scare at Sunday dinner. "Much better," I told him. "Just tired. You know how it is." "You need to look after yourself, Dad," he said. "I worry about you." I looked at my son sitting in my living room. I thought about $12,847. I thought about Elaine's private savings account, the one she had built a little at a time for 40 years. I thought about the comments he had been placing in other people's minds about my ability to manage my own life. Then I lifted my glass of sweet tea. "You're right, son. I'm going to pay much closer attention to everything from now on." Nathan nodded. He looked pleased. He had no idea what was already moving around him. On day 4, Rebecca went to the house on Elmwood Court on a Tuesday morning, while Nathan believed she was at work. She used her spare key and moved through the home she had grown up in, with a list of documents Diane Parker needed. Original paperwork. Files from the back office. Records Nathan did not know Rebecca could reach because he had never imagined she would stop defending him long enough to act against him. Rebecca later told me she did not let herself feel anything while she was inside the house. She stayed focused. She found what was needed. She carried it to the car. Then she sat behind the steering wheel for 10 minutes before she was able to leave. I never asked what happened inside those 10 minutes. I did not need to. On day 6, Diane began emergency Medicaid planning to identify whatever protections were still available after the fraud. She found legal options I had not known existed, structures that might still preserve Elaine's care possibilities despite how badly the retirement account had been drained. The memory care facility on Carmel Road, the place I had visited twice alone, the place saved on my phone, the place I had prayed about at night, was still within reach. Elaine was going to be okay. For the first time in 9 days, I felt myself take a full breath. On day 7, Nathan returned. He stayed longer. He asked careful questions about my health and eventually brought up whether I had considered updating my advance directive paperwork. "Just trying to be responsible, Dad." Thinking ahead, I watched him for a long moment. For half a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You're right, Nathan," I said. "I should be thinking ahead." He smiled. Then he drove away. Every door around him was already shut. He just had not reached for one yet. On day 9, a Sunday morning, I called him. "Son, I'm feeling much better. Come to dinner at the house tonight. Bring something nice. We have plenty to be grateful for." Nathan arrived at Elmwood Court at 6 o'clock with an expensive bottle of wine and his widest smile. I had set the table carefully. Elaine wore the blue dress again, the one I had loved on her for years. She was having a good day. She was present, warm, occasionally funny in the way that used to make me fall in love with her again in the middle of an ordinary week. At one point, she told a story from 35 years earlier, and Rebecca laughed, despite everything she was carrying. Rebecca sat there listening to her mother laugh while holding 4 months of knowledge about her brother inside herself. Owen was beside her, quiet as usual, steady. The same man most people would not remember much about after meeting him. Nathan sat at the head of the table as though nothing had changed. Charming, helpful, refilling glasses, laughing at his own jokes, playing the role of the devoted son the way he had for the previous 16 months. The food was good. For a while, the evening almost looked normal. Then, halfway through the first course, someone knocked at the front door. I stood. I walked across my own floor, through the house Elaine and I had built our family inside, and opened the door. 2 financial crimes detectives stood there in plain clothes with paperwork in hand. Detective Aaron Mills and his partner. Calm, professional, in no hurry. I had spoken with them 3 days earlier. They knew who they were there to see. I stepped aside. They entered. Behind me, Nathan stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. I turned and watched his face as he began to understand. And this is the part I still remember most clearly. Guilt was not the first thing I saw. His eyes moved. To me, to Owen, to Rebecca, then toward the front door. He was looking for a way out. There was not one. Rebecca stood slowly. For 9 days, she had been thinking about what she might say when this moment came. She had rehearsed sentences, changed them, shortened them, thrown them away. When the moment finally arrived, she used almost none of what she had prepared. Her voice stayed low. "Look at Mom before you leave this house, Nathan." Nathan turned toward Elaine. Elaine looked back at him with the same warmth she always had. She did not understand what was happening in the room. As far as she knew, maybe Nathan was simply leaving dinner a little early. She lifted one hand and gave him a gentle wave. "Good night, sweetheart," she said. "You're such a good boy. You always have been." Rebecca let the words remain there. Elaine's illness had done something none of us could have planned. It had protected Nathan from seeing his mother fully understand what he had done. Her memory might keep his name warm for the rest of her life. He would never have to earn that warmth back. Rebecca looked at him. "She'll probably keep believing that, Nathan. Her mind may protect you from ever seeing her face change. You may never have to watch her understand what you did to this family." Her voice did not rise. "But I understand it. Dad understands it. I know about every withdrawal you made while he was getting up at 5 in the morning to give her medication. I know about every paper you put in front of him when he was exhausted and trying to keep her safe. I know every time you sat at this table and let him thank God for you." Nathan said nothing. Rebecca continued, "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure they're both okay. Not because I'm required to, because that is what loving someone is supposed to look like." The detectives walked Nathan out through the front door of the house on Elmwood Court. Elaine watched him go from her chair at the table. She smiled and waved, completely convinced her son was simply heading home after another family dinner. Nathan eventually pleaded guilty. The evidence trail Owen had assembled left very little room to argue about what had happened. The charges included elder financial abuse, criminal fraud, and federal structuring charges. Restitution was ordered. It comes back slowly, in pieces, almost the same way it disappeared. Some of it will never come back. I have made peace with that. Or I am still learning how to. Some days, that is as far as a person gets. But Elaine's care is protected. The emergency Medicaid planning Diane Parker started helped make that possible. The memory care facility on Carmel Road, the one I had walked through alone, the one I had prayed over in the dark, is within reach now. Elaine will be okay. Not the way we once imagined our later years. Not perfect, but okay. And right now, okay means everything to me. There is one part of this I keep returning to. Nathan was my blood. Owen chose me. When the people you assumed would stay are the ones who break what you trusted them with. Being chosen by someone who never owed you that loyalty can put part of you back together. Not all of it. Enough. If this story meant something to you, join our community by liking the video and subscribing for more real, raw, family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being part of Dad's Raw Revenge. I'll see you in the next one.